Welcome back to Knee Month Challenge. We're on week 4, day 23. Today, we're going to be taking a break on any work done to the tissues, done to the structure itself. It's going to be really, really important for recovery. So with that being said, taking a nap today, going to bed early, hydrating, get out for a walk, move the body a little bit, pain-free, of course. It's going to be really important to help the healing of the body itself. But today, we're going to be going over assess, address, awareness. All of those three terms can be used interchangeably with one another by assessing what's going on with any problems, injuries. How do you address that? How do you assess that? All those will play a factor. So we're going to be going over injuries, how change to the tissue can affect your structure long term. We're also be going over daily maintenance and whatnot with that too. So as we go into this, assess, address, awareness. With any injury itself, it's going to leave anatomical change to where the tissues, when you have, let's say, for example, you scrape your arm, there's blood coming out, the body has to scar that up. And then there's weaker tissues with that. I don't want to go too deep into the woods with this one, but it'll lay down type 3 collagen, which then is weaker, has more pain receptors. That then has to work its way up and build to grow to type 1 collagen. There's somewhere around 30 different types of collagen itself, but you look at that from the skin, but then also in terms of internal state of like the muscles, tissues. That's where fibrosis takes place, to where with the injury itself, the body doesn't heal optimally. It's just not something that our genetic code of how we came to be is able to progress and overcome itself. Because usually if you get injured, going back to our ancestors, you usually die or become weakness to the prey itself. And that's not necessarily like something that was terms selected for as our species kind of grew to what we know thus far. So by saying that with the injury itself, you have to pay attention to that for not only weeks, months, sometimes years, sometimes longer than that, in terms of decades, depending on healing rates, what comes into your body, external factors of stress, all that plays a factor into terms of how the body functions and heals itself. So let's take a look at the knee. So right here, we have the knee. With any injury itself, the first thing lost is rotation. Also, how the neurons and the nerves target the joints. With any problem with any joint, it causes overlying muscle tightness. But the joints are the first to communicate to the brain and first to come back. So, like I said, if there's something wrong with that, it'll cause overlying muscle tightness, spasming as a guarding mechanism. So we have to start at the joint first and then work ourselves out from there. So like I said before, rotation is the first thing lost. So you want to start with the deep structures, turning in and out, which is also why we looked at top down, then also bottom up, but especially staying at the knee itself. So let's say you have an injury, doesn't matter whether it's a blow to the outside or you just even shifting wrong. When that happens, like let's say you're a soccer player, you shift in and out. If your body is not able to absorb force outwards and then dissipate and explode through that area, those tissues will blow up. They'll lead to a lot of guarding, and then the joint usually can compensate from there with tightness on one side and pulling on the other, which will also affect the joint itself. So not only are we looking and we have to heal the joint, but we also have to heal the damaged tissue that wasn't able to absorb the load, and also dissipate and push through the force in that exact same sequence. So it gets complicated. The body is a fascinating structure, but you want to pay attention to that specifically. Now, as we go through, so let's say for an injury, let's say you were playing pickleball, you're playing tennis, what have you with that, you had the injury, you have some aches, pains. Some of that is just micro damage to where you want to keep the maintenance of your body. So you first, like I said, you got to start with the rotation. So going back to the knee workspace, that's any type of workspaces. A lot of this is also a secondary term for CARS, controlled articular rotations. Some of that is trademark, so I went the workspace route due to the research. Besides the point on that. So starting off with rotational movements, ideally of the joint that got injured or joint of the surrounding tissues that get injured, but also above and below that, or proximal and distal to that joint as well, or that area, is also really, really important to target those structures, mainly because there's a lot of tissues that start off on one side and then attach to the joint or above the joint or even below the joint. So by looking internally to externally, bottom up, top down, you'll be able to optimally heal those tissues better for long term. Thus, so you don't have to go see different practitioners. You have a good idea in terms of what works well for the human being itself. So that is one thing. Now, in terms of maintenance of the body, so we got the backside of the knees. This kind of just adds to my point itself. For maintenance, for any tissues, workspaces, and rotation of the joints of the area is going to be primary. That can be used as a warm-up. That can be added load to that, which can work all the tissues surrounding the whole joint itself. Those are all incredibly important for the maintenance of the structure of the body. Movement is very, very important. It's a fine line between breaking down and building up. Or are you dying or are you living? It goes back to that. So that is a huge focus. Workspaces are going to be huge maintenance-wise. Also, ideally once a month for every tissue, you want to go to max effort. Just one rep, because you only need to send one signal to the body for the body to send resources to build that up. In terms of maintenance mode, it's a give or take between 28 days plus or minus 3 days is where the literature is at thus far, but we're still early on the research to where it's hard to tell, but it's a good rule to go by in terms of max effort. Ideally, walking is going to be incredibly important. Not only walking in a sagittal direction, but also moving the body in a frontal direction with side planks, with lateral lunges, and also in like a 45-degree angles as well in terms of shifting the body. So plyometrics come in place. So there's a lot of different factors with this, but you want to optimally move your body in different directions. Go explore, go have fun, work the body till it's sore, till you send that signal. All those are incredibly important for the maintenance and the rebuild of tissues, also long term from there. So that will give you a little better insight in terms of maintenance of the body, in terms of how to treat an injury. You want to start rotational tissues first, especially at the joint, and then you can lay down different lines of tissue in terms of moving the joint or the body in different ways with that. Also, paying attention to intensity. Intensity of movements is also incredibly important. The more intensity, the more neural drive is going to those tissues. And if those tissues aren't able to absorb that intensity, it'll also give out. Thus, why you have to start at a lower progression and then slowly add on building blocks, relax, add on building blocks, relax, add on building blocks in terms of weeks. When I say relax, in terms of rest days, in terms of coming back and taking a back step, of just doing like mobility work instead of exercising and weightlifting for a period of time. That's kind of where we have to go from there. That gives you a good insight in terms of how the body functions and works as well. So if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. I'll be able to answer those to the best I can. A lot of it will be specific to each person, specific to each incident and scenario, but just to give you a broad overscope in terms of the philosophy and how you heal tissues and how the joints are affected. And this is just knees. Now, that's not even mentioning the spine, because that's a whole nother ballgame itself. But that's one thing to pay attention to as we go through for the long-term stint. I hope you guys see you on the next one. We'll go from there. We'll keep going back and working on the tissues on the next one as well. It's going to be a good one. Hope you see you guys next one. See ya.